Hi guys, how's everybody doing? I'm back today to do a vinyl finds video, and these are mainly, I would say, online buys, Amazon, Discogs, that sort of thing. Playing in the background, I've got this album here, which is a new acquisition for me. It's The Beat featuring Ranking Roger. Recently in my top 20 artists, I had the Beat at number 7, I believe. Even though this is credited to The Beat, it really is Ranking Roger and his solo album, let's call it. There's another version of The Beat called the English Beat that is present in North America, which is Dave Wakeling's group. So the two guys are running their own versions of The Beat. Truth be told, I'm not fond of Dave Wakeling's album. I've heard it a few times online. Ranking Roger's album is much better, but having said that, this doesn't even come close to the original 3 Beat albums. Even Whoppin', which is my least favorite Beat album, I still really love and is much better than this. This is more Beat sounding than the Dave Wakeling English Beat album. And it's a good album, and his son's on here, Ranking Jr., and it's pretty good. Like I liked it enough after hearing a few tracks to get it, but still doesn't compare to the original English Beat. Next, I got this album yesterday. It came out about a week ago. This is J Mascis, Elastic Days. It's his new album this year. Came out on the 9th. J Mascis, of course, the leader of Dinosaur Jr. And this is exactly what you would expect from a J Mascis solo album. Basically, acoustic guitar on the verses and chorus. J Mascis lazy melodic singing. Then you get an electric guitar on the an electric guitar solo. And that's pretty much the template for all these songs. But having said that, it's still really good and very catchy. Can only get better with time, I think. Elastic Days, J Mascis. Another Hendrix pickup. I never had this on vinyl. Band of Gypsies. I've had the Fillmore East extended release, which came out a couple of years ago. So I never really found the need to get Band of Gypsies on vinyl, but when I saw it for a decent price, I thought I'd grab it. Don't need to say much about this. Of course, with Billy Cox and Buddy Miles replacing the original Experience live album. And then I have The Fall. This is called 458, 489, the A-sides. And you know, it's exactly that. It's a bunch of Fall singles from, I guess, mainly the early to mid 80s. And the only other Fall I had, which I showed maybe a couple of videos ago, was a 12-inch single for the song Hit the North, which is my favorite Fall song, and that song is on here as well. I don't know if you can see the track listing there. 17 tracks. You know, if you don't want to get all the individual or some of the individual Fall albums, this is a great alternative. And then it took me a while to get my first Captain Beefheart, but it didn't take me very long to get my second Captain Beefheart. This is Captain Beefheart, Doc at the Radar Station, I believe this is called. Yeah, this is his album from 1980. I believe it's Captain Beefheart's second last release. There was only one more after this, and this is sort of in the vein, very different sounding than Safe as Milk, but more in the vein of Trout Mask Replica, but maybe a little bit more accessible than that. Still getting into this. This was entirely new to me, this album. And then we have the MC5, Babes in Arms. And I have 2 other MC5 records, which are Kick Out the Jams and Back in the USA. And I needed their third album, I think it's called Hire Time. And this had quite a few songs from that, plus some additional songs. There's 15 tracks on here. This is sort of a best of collection. Kick Out the Jams is the only song from that album on here, and there's about 4 or 5 tracks from Back in the USA, and then a bunch of tracks from Hire Time. So I thought this was a good compilation to pick up. And then what is probably my favorite Bob Dylan record, Time Out of Mind. Finally got this on vinyl. I've had it on CD for many years, and I don't know, it's just an amazing Bob Dylan, later period Dylan album. I think this came out originally in '97, I want to say. But I love this album. I also love Love and Theft. I think they're up there with Dylan's best. Time Out of Mind. And then another Jimi Hendrix album from pre-Experience days. This is called, I believe it's called In the Beginning. And again, I think it's Jimi Hendrix just on guitar. No vocals from Jimmy on this. I think most of the vocals are done by Lonnie Youngblood, maybe some Curtis Knight. The credits are a little sketchy on this, but you know, early Hendrix, he's already sounding like the way he did with the Experience. And I love Hendrix. He was my 4th favorite artist on my top 20. And we have Donovan, the hurdy-gurdy man. I've been looking for this album actually for quite a long time. This is up there with Sunshine Superman and Mellow Yellow for me. And the copy's a little bit beat up, but the vinyl plays pretty good, so I'm pretty happy. I think this is one of the essential Donovan albums back from the 60s. Johnny Winter, the Progressive Blues Experiment. I think this is Johnny Winter's maybe 2nd album overall. I could be wrong about that. But again, another one that I've been looking for quite some time. And got a good price on Discogs on this. Definitely some essential Johnny Winter here. This album's a favorite of mine. I knew quite a few tracks from this going into it, and also the album Second Winter. And then another album I've been looking to find for quite some time. We have the Bee Gees' Odessa, which is a double album on the felt cover. I almost once got an edited version of this, like a single disc version, and I'm glad I didn't, because then this full-length double 2LP version became available. This is some excellent early Bee Gees. I think this is maybe their 4th album overall. I could be wrong about that. And the title track is just amazing. Still waiting to get the Bee Gees' first album, which I have ordered online, used copy of that. And I think the only other early Bee Gees that I need is their 2nd album, Idea. And this is just fantastic stuff. Then Eric Clapton's Journeyman. This is, I believe, from '89. I could be wrong. Eric Clapton's 80s albums are pretty sketchy. I don't have many of them. I have August, which is not a great album. It only has a couple of decent tracks. But this is where things started going back on track, I think, for Clapton with Journeyman in '89. And soon after this, he released the MTV Unplugged album, which became a huge hit. Some of the songs that are well known from here, I think, Pretending, Bad Love, Running on Faith, Before You Accuse Me cover. This is a great album. I really like this album. I've had it on CD for many years as well. And some of those songs that I just named off are also on the Clapton Unplugged album. continuing my Jeff Beck collection, we have the Jeff Beck group. I guess the title of this album is just a self-titled, but it's commonly known as, because of the picture on the front there, as the Orange Album. And this is the Jeff Beck group in its second incarnation after Rod Stewart and Ronnie Wood had left the band. Jeff formed his second Jeff Beck group album with, I think the guy's name on vocals was Bob Tench, and some other, a little bit more in a fusion style here, which kind of was maybe foreshadowing the way to his solo albums Wired and Blow by Blow, though it's not as good as that. Jeff Beck group. This was the second album from this lineup of the Jeff Beck group. I've shown some Animals many times before, and here we have Eric Burden, Declares War. After leaving the Animals, the original lineup, and the second lineup of the Animals, then he left that band altogether and made several albums with the group War. Peter Green, In the Skies. I've shown Peter Green in the past as part of Fleetwood Mac, and this album is from 1979, solo album. I love this album. This is an amazing, amazing album. It's a little bit controversial in that Snowy White, who I guess was also in a later version of Thin Lizzy, is on this album and plays lead guitar, or at least is credited with lead guitar on the first two tracks on this, and then the remainder, the lead guitar is credited to Peter Green. But I think there's some stories out there that Snowy White actually plays a lot more lead guitar than what he's credited for on this album. I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe some of you know better than I do. But what I do know is Peter Green's vocals sound fantastic on this, and whoever is playing guitar is doing an amazing job, whether it's Snowy White or Peter Green. This is a fantastic, fantastic album, and definitely, in my opinion, the best of the Peter Green solo albums. End of the Game, which he made back in '70, was a great album, and some of you may like that better than this. That was a different time period. This was, late 70s, 79. Peter Green had gone through a lot of personal problems and issues, and to be able to put out an album like this, and immediately I started searching for some other Peter Green on Discogs to see what I could find, but this is highly, highly recommended. This is the band Destroyer and their album Kaput. Destroyer is led by, his name escapes me right now, but he's also in the band The New Pornographers. This album is, it reminds me a lot actually of late period Roxy Music, especially around the Avalon period. And this was an album that I had a digital download for many years. Not something that I played a lot, but it certainly has that sort of Avalon kind of feel for me. So I snapped up a copy of this. I've had this for a few months now, but I really haven't spun it a lot. I really need to spin it some more. So Destroyer Kaput. This is Richie Havens. This album, it's called Richie Havens Record, and from what I've read about this, this was some recordings that Richie Havens made, I believe with just him and acoustic guitar, and then later on there was a full band that was dubbed over top of it, and I think it's an album that Richie Havens actually disowns because of what was done in that manner. But I have to be honest, I actually really like this quite a lot, despite that. And there's a really good version of the Led Zeppelin cover of, I think, Joan Baez cover, Baby I'm Gonna Leave You, which is a really great version. Yeah, it's called Babe I'm Leaving. A really good version of that. So even though he's unhappy with it, I'm really happy with it. Black Sabbath. This is called Attention Black Sabbath. This is part of a series where I guess this label did some compilations of a bunch of different groups. There's some other ones here on the back. The Searchers. Not sure who else they did. But what this basically is, and why I got this, is Black Sabbath's first album, self-titled album, minus the Black Sabbath song, and in its place you have Paranoid and Iron Man from the second album. So kind of an interesting track list. Bill Ward, I just find Bill Ward's drumming to be exceptional, and clearly he's a rock drummer, but I feel that he also has sort of a jazz sensibility, and there's something that I really love about Bill Ward's playing. Maybe just a couple more. We have the band Magazine and their live album Play. Don't know much about Magazine other than it's led by Howard Devoto, who used to be in the Buzzcocks, and this is a live album from Magazine. Still only played this maybe once or twice. And just ending on another live album, we have the Kinks live at Kelvin Hall. This is the Kinks back from the 60s, so it's still early Kinks, and pretty good live album. It has a decent sound, but I guess similar to the Beatles' Hollywood Bowl album, there's a lot of girls screaming on this, maybe not to the same extent as the Hollywood Bowl, but there's still a lot of that screaming. You could still enjoy the songs, it doesn't ruin it, but a lot of the reviews that I had actually read for this make mention of that. So we'll end there on the Kinks live at Kelvin Hall. Those are just some of my pickups over the last couple months, and I'll do maybe a video in a couple weeks or so with the rest of those. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. See you around.